Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. Today we are going to be looking at some more of our students' second coursework. My name is Tom Bow, I am one of the lecturers on the course and I am joined here today by...
Hi, I'm Bob Remington and I'm one of the demonstrators on this course.
Fantastic, nice to have you with us, Bob. So this coursework was all about storytelling in games. We asked the students to make a small game prototype with a story engine, so something where the gameplay affects the story and the story affects the gameplay. And we asked them to base it on one of 3 fables, which we'll have a look at in a little bit. So without further ado, let's have a look at our first game. And our first game is An Inconsistent Christmas Story. Well, let's hope the story is not too inconsistent, but it's a lovely title screen. We've got some nice snow falling in the background. Let's hit play and jump right into it.
I do love a snowy scene.
That's a nice transition, that is.
It is. Like the little stars in the window. Incredibly cute.
I was going to say, oh, what a lovely little cutscene. What a nice way of conveying some exposition. Nope, exposition done. Okay. We are a child on Christmas. We open our presents. You open one from Santa, only to realise that it's completely empty. You want to confront him. So interestingly, this seems to be based on one of the exercises we did in class, which is kind of nice. Ooh, that control's a little bit sensitive, but there we go. Tree, snow. We are inside the house now.
Well, gotta be to open your presents.
So it feels a bit weird to do that exposition dump and then to make us open the present and find that there's nothing there. So I can take the present, put the present back, take, put back, take, put back. Can't take any of the other presents, so I've just got to take this one. Of course, we also need 2 Christmas trees in the bedroom.
Well, where else are we going to keep them? Maybe you... Oh.
You only have space to take 1 item with you. I can't put this down anywhere. Put it back under the tree and get the knife.
The tree. Oh, so you've chosen the path of violence, I see.
No, I just, obviously you can't open a present with your bare hands.
Indeed, but I think the context here is that you are going to either take the present back to Santa and be like, excuse me, bro, could you mind filling this, please? Or you're going to take a knife to Santa.
Oh, I see. See, we don't have that much...
That is my interpretation.
I think you're probably right. We don't have that much guidance or... of course, living room upstairs, bedroom downstairs. I don't know why I'm picking up on...
House?
I was going to say, I don't know why I'm... what's the word? Being precious about that. Let's take the path of present first. Ooh, yeah, the camera control is very, very sensitive.
I do find that PlayStation.
Oh, a circus directly to the North Pole. Very nice. Ooh.
I do find that the default setting for things like camera stuff like this in Unity is incredibly sensitive, and that does happen sometimes in the courseworks.
I'll be honest, I kind of love these train graphics.
Oh yeah, it is the platonic ideal of a train. Get on the train.
Oh.
Oh no, Luton.
Oh no, the worst ending. Oh no. Okay.
I don't recall seeing a board saying that this train is to Luton, so that feels a little bit harsh.
Maybe I didn't look. If there's not a board that says that, there's a 50-50 chance that I'm going to get on that train again. So we might be doing this a lot.
Going to
hang
Luton,
on, no.
that seems unfair.
North Pole. Okay, yeah, I'm not can't go this way. Is there a thing that tells us which one to get on? Am I just not looking properly?
I don't see a thing.
Left of the board.
Train, but...
There we go.
Hey, okay. Phew.
So, when we get on to talking about agency and richness of choices, I will admit that is technically constitutes a branch, but not in the sense that we generally mean. A game over screen is not a branch in your story. It's just a game over. Ooh, big Christmas tree.
It's a big Christmas tree.
Small elf. Again, I actually really like.
staring at you.
I really like the sort of like 2.5D. Is it 2.5D? You've got like just a sprite that turns to face you. Like in a weird way, it like obviously contrasts quite a bit with all like the actual 3D models and things like that, but there's something very appealing about it. Also, extremely disturbing, just having all the tiny
it's an
elves.
extremely unsettling vibe, which is good. Which like it works with the space, which is you know, a little sparse, but they've made that work by making it unsettling.
Again, this corridor as well is something straight out of a horror film. You show Santa the empty present that you have brought with you. He apologizes, saying it must have been a workshop error, and gives you 2 new presents. The end.
Whoa, 2 new presents.
Okay. So I guess that is the end-to-end story. So we will we'll go through and try the other approach and just see how different that gameplay is if we bring a knife to a Santa fight. But in the meantime, let's start talking about the mark scheme, starting off with overall quality, so presentation and play. What do you think of the presentation?
I think there's a fair bit of consistency in the sort of low poly look. Even though it is a bit, you know, these empty spaces, it sort of works as an overall slightly black, slightly surreal comic vibe. The moments of exposition
Oh,
are quite funny.
This is worse.
Oh, yeah.
So
There's
I was about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the information. Oh dear, an elf killed you.
Is that sound? Have another look. So
but the overall sort of presentation of information, things like not knowing whether you're on a train to Luton or the North Pole, like that elf killing you and you're not really having any feedback that your health is going down and so on.
Yeah, like
your confusion at the start about what you're going to do with the stuff, I think, isn't the best kind of information communication.
Yeah, like the Luton Gambit, I'm happy to say is, you know what, that was a funny joke. You got me. If the whole game had been like just blundering into pit traps, that would kind of suck. Doing it once is fun, but you're right. The things like the overall objective and particularly this harrowing combat section. Like, I'm not sure if I'm damaging the elves. I'm not sure if they're damaging me. I'm not sure how much health I've got.
I think there's just snowballs flying at you.
It looks like that, but I don't know if they're
doing a good job of dodging them.
Yeah, but how do I stab and dodge at the same time? It's like rounding them up like a sheepdog at the minute. So
when you wave that knife, is that you clicking or?
Yeah, you can probably hear it on the microphone. Just desperate spamming of the mouse button. Okay, they do kind of like make a little bit of a jump. Do they flash rip? So that's going to be. We're going to see a lot of me being killed by elves, I think, in this.
Can you go past them to Santa's workshop? Like,
I'll try that. I'll try that next time. So we don't have any sound, which is a bit disappointing. So like as far as I can tell, there's no audio at all. So no sound effects, no background music, which is a real shame. Which I think is probably going to limit sort of where it sits on presentation, combined with like the information design issues. So a pass would be flawed, so simplistic or many inconsistent elements, which I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily flawed. Simplistic in the sense that there's no audio, but the graphics are. I actually do kind of like they're janky, but in an endearing kind of way.
Yeah, I have no problem with like slightly janky graphics. I generally find that quite endearing, and if it all works together, then I rarely have a problem with it. But things like the lack of sound or lack of sort of communication of things like attacking and receiving damage and so on, I feel like that puts it more into the flawed category because it is inconsistent, and the lack of sound, and a complete lack of sound, because you don't get that feedback.
Yeah, so for a satisfactory, that would be, it's workable, effective with some inconsistencies, and I think because those things we've mentioned, it doesn't quite hit there, but it maybe is halfway between the two.
Okay, I would accept halfway between the two. I think that's fair.
Gameplay.
Meaningful play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's not until I
Yeah.
picked the path of violence, I was going to say there is no gameplay. Or at least
Because the mechanic is sort of move,
the mechanic is
click, interact.
Can I even having said that, I don't think there's a wide variety of mechanics, particularly this combat section. Again, partly because of the information design, partly because of perhaps the unforgiving nature of these snowballs. I would say it's very challenging to get through it. Like I'm not the best in the world at games. I wouldn't say I'm the worst in the world at games, and I'm yet to be able to make it through that pit of elves.
That's true. Having said that, the game hasn't bugged out or collapsed it or got itself caught in a loop. You haven't got stuck on any corners, really. It does
that is true
through the narrative, simple as it is.
But I think that's part of that reason is because it's so simple.
Yes, that is absolutely true, 100%. But when you're getting hit by a snowball, you're dying, and I like that is, even if it's not exactly, even if it is a difficult fight scene to fight, it is not. It is working. It is working as programmed.
But balance and playability is still a thing that we can talk about in this. So it's relatively unforgiving. So a pass, for example, would be play is challenging. It's a simple game with few mechanics, or there are awkward controls, or it has serious bugs. And you're right, it doesn't have any serious bugs, but I do think it's probably challenging to play. And in terms of mechanics, what have we've got picking up knife or picking up present, and then sort of going through and effectively, I guess interacting with the door and the train and things. But even that is a reach in terms of a set of mechanics for play. Yeah. It's one step removed from clicking on a link in a hypertext.
Interact with thing. And I think that that combined with the fact that it is few mechanics and that it is quite a simple game. It's these scenes, and most of them you sort of go through them in a fairly in a pretty similar way each time. I think that sort of puts it into the challenging category, because it is it's simple and there are a few mechanics. Even though there aren't serious bugs, and there are to some extent somewhat awkward controls. The camera is very sensitive, and you're not sure how to engage in combat.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it wasn't for the final climactic battle with the elves, I would be saying it's probably in the poor range, because it is quite limited in scope and mechanics. I'm even thinking it's still kind of veering towards that, just because of. I think we'll talk about this in pacing a little bit as well, but the amount of times that I've had to repeat it, and therefore the amount of times I've had to sit on a platform waiting for a train to try again, is a little bit frustrating. So I'm almost thinking it feels somewhere in the region of maybe between a poor and a pass.
Okay, I think that's I can accept that.
Left. Can I keep moving? So going left seems to work a lot better than going right. I have a horrible feeling I am going to have to fight all of these elves before I can get through the door. Oh no, I can go through the door. So I don't have to fight the elves.
From an aesthetic perspective, I actually do love this scene with the lights, the little fairy point lights, and the creepy corridor. It reminds me a lot of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is one of the great
does. Exposition dump. Santa questions why you have brought a weapon with you, but is happy that you have not attacked his staff. Oh, interesting. So we do have... Okay. He tells you that next year, if you are good, he will personally make sure that you get a good present.
Nice. Well, that's so we found 3 endings now.
All right, so now I've got to try and kill an elf and survive.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you come through, I think this is going to be the real challenge, is if you can get the brutal ending, which is unusual in this kind of game. Usually, the path of non-violence is the more difficult. Whereas in this one, it's definitely the most straightforward. Whereas most violence is proving tricky.
Okay, so now that we've seen 2 endings to the story, let's talk about that story engine.
Yeah.
And I was about to say, well, game to story, no, there's no real impact. Other than, I guess, picking up the present or picking up the knife, which you could argue is more a narrative choice than a choice we're making in gameplay. But again, that's partly just because the gameplay is so limited, it's hard to say what's a mechanical gameplay choice. But the fact that we saw an ending there which was depended on if we had killed elves or not, which is, again, arguably the only bit of gameplay, says to me that there is definitely some game-to-story interaction there.
Yeah.
All right, let's give this
I
a
would
go.
also argue that now forgive me if I get this the wrong way around, but which object you arrive with. So you've got your choice of knife or present, and whether you show up with knife or present dictates how the elves respond to you when you get to the workshop.
So to me, I would say that's probably story to game world in a sense, because
That's fair.
sort of wandering around and sort of effectively choosing which prompt we pick is
you are making that choice. It is a diegetic choice, but you are making that choice, and that is affecting the game world. Yeah, that's fair.
yeah. And then, like you say, it has a gameplay impact, which is to say, either there is gameplay or there is not gameplay. So we'll get onto that one in a
game
second.
world to story. There's that's an example you've got. Were there any others that stuck out for you?
I think that's really so again, partly because it's a little bit small in scope. That's the only one I've spotted. So a pass would be sparse or minor examples of where the game world impacts the story. A poor would be support for story elements, but the game world has no real impact on the story. And I think it's probably above that, because it does have an impact on the story. Like it looks like we've got 3 different endings. I don't know if we'll ever see them, but arguably, again, it's a stretch. But if we get on the wrong train, we get a different ending.
Yeah, it is a stretch, but it is definitely a game world effect story because you're on a train to Luton, and that is it curtails the story and in fact brings it to a dead halt, but that it is nonetheless a game world thing, and arguably I would say it's very game world to story because it's not entirely in your hands as well, because you're not quite sure which train does what.
Yeah, that doesn't make it a good choice, but you're right, it does make it an element of the story engine. So
yeah,
okay,
I certainly wouldn't say it impacts the story in important ways.
Well,
it's a lot of interplay, but I do feel like it contributes one of the few sparse or minor examples of where the game world impacts the story. So I would put that as a pass potentially.
Yeah, I think so too. What about story to game world? And again, if we take the I'm making a story choice here as to whether I take the present or the knife, then that has an impact on the gameplay. In so much as, again, you either get gameplay or you don't. So it doesn't feel like it quite hits the pass level there.
I do feel like because everything else is extremely similar, you don't get a difference in environments. You don't really get a difference in which characters you can and cannot interact with, or which encounters you have beyond this elf fight scene.
I got one. Run.
Oh, you got one. Amazing. Did it fall over or die or anything?
It just disappeared. But
it disappeared. Well, that's cool. It's nice that you could tell that you had done a murder.
That's true. It's always good when you can tell you've done it. Santa is very angry. He vows to kill you. Have we unlocked a secret boss fight, do we think? We have.
I love it. We have.
Man, imagine having your climactic, but I'm never going to beat this first time, am I?
I don't. Oh, yep, there we go.
Turns out both you and Santa are morally questionable people.
I do like that there is a secret boss fight. It was hard to get to.
I don't think it's supposed to be secret. I will say again, let's say the interior of Santa's Christmas lair may be a little bit inconsistent with the rest of the visual style. Like it's just some blue cubes, but it is what it is.
It's a void space.
Let's see if we can get there again. It might be a while.
So
So
here we have an example, I think, of a scene that, depending on choices, you may or may not see. So that does feel like a more significant outcome.
but I would say that is gameplay affecting story again, because it's if I kill an elf, I get more of the story.
Yeah, yeah. You get to see the moral questionability of Santa.
So let's stab. So yeah, game world to story I think is sort of a pass. Story to game world I think is maybe more between a poor and a pass.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I think that's okay.
Richness of choices. Now this is
I've looked at a whole bunch of things from a bunch of angles, and I think that's probably between them. But yeah, richness of choices and agency. I do think it's quite limited.
it does feel, yeah, we have a choice at the beginning that sort of determines the trajectory of the rest of the game, but I wouldn't say what we have. And we have a choice when we get to the elf fight. So we've effectively got one branch that goes right to the end, or to Luton, and we've got one branch that then splits again into Chapter Santa or Try and Stab Santa. So there are some branches, but it's a very, if this was a tree, it wouldn't have a lot of leaves on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There is because that main choice is at the beginning of the game for me, for my money, about present or knife, and you don't really know that that's going to be the main dictator. It doesn't feel like you can flexibly go between sort of stories and narratives and make actively informed decisions about how you come across, how you engage and stuff, beyond diegetically engaging with fight or not fight.
I say it's not that there aren't many choices, although there aren't, but it's that even those choices don't have the necessary context around them to make it an interesting choice.
Yeah, there's in the discussion of their story engine, they mentioned that if you choose to attack elves within the workshop, you're given an opportunity to enter a boss fight with Santa. It's not really an opportunity because you can't say no. You do enter the boss fight with Santa. So whereabouts do you think that sits in the marking criteria?
Well, sorry, poor would be there are few choices and agency is problematic. I mean, there are few choices. Are there problems with agency? So the train to Luton, which is kind of
it doesn't
nice.
feel like you actually have an informed choice there.
Yeah, exactly. There is agency around that is problematic. If it was like that all the way through, I would be inclined to put it in a poor. Again, as a one-off gag, I'll let that slide.
Yeah.
The choice of, again, this ties into the information design of, I wasn't sure what I was doing at the start, but with the context of, I'm off to confront Santa, do I want to confront him with the bad present or with a knife? You could argue is an interesting choice, right? Are we going to choose, are we going to wake up today and choose violence? And we have some idea of the possible or probable consequences of that. So a pass would be, there are some choices, but only a few are interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that there is that one choice, and that is, or that choice is the interesting choice, and that is better than there being non-interesting choices or it feeling completely railroaded the entire way through. So I would be comfortable with the pass there.
Well, see, this is the thing. It's some choices, but only a few are interesting, and I think only one interesting.
A few is more than one.
A few is maybe more than one. So I would say maybe between a poor and a pass for that as well.
Fair. Okie dokie. Now, in terms of pacing, I feel like you have some thoughts on pacing.
So in terms of mechanical pacing, it's kind of all over the place in that we have a nice cutscene, but a cutscene that we have to sit through, and then a train platform that we have to not the train to Luton, and then an extremely high bump in difficulty, if depending on which branch we've taken, or again just looking at some creepy elves. And in a way, the narrative pacing is not a whole lot better, because we have just calling it an exposition dump and giving you a whole bunch of text on it. On the one hand, lampshading that is quite funny, but on the other, yeah, it's an exposition dump. You're just putting all of it in text rather than putting that into your game.
Yeah, the joke. I'm afraid the joke does wear a little thin. Like if it had been a one-off because this is how we're going to set up the game, then fair enough. Or if it's because we need to do some interchanging things, an interchanging scene because you're getting on a train, then that's okay too. Um, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know if it's meaningful for the whole. I don't know if it's not a good way to. Um, it's not a good way to convey narrative ebb and flow consistently through a game. If you're going to have that kind of visual novel effect, then there needs to be effort to make it feel consistently part of gameplay and part of the various peaks, in my opinion.
Yeah. Although, so I will say, again, sort of mechanically, it's maybe a bit choppy, but we do have, fight with elves and then potentially climactic boss battle with Santa, if I can ever
That
get to
is
the
true.
end.
That is that there's
1717.
we can say that there's some ascending pacing there because if you can, then you are ascending towards a fight with Santa. If you go the non-violence route, it doesn't really feel like there is any pacing, I must say, because you just arrive at the elf workshop. The elves don't interact with you really, and then you get to Santa and he gives you two presents, and that's a nice ending, but it's not particularly fulfilling as a game.
I think that's.
Um,
I think part of the problem is the pacing of the two different branches are so wildly different that it's again, it's not just flat, but it feels like they haven't thought about how they're controlling the pacing of those two different branches. One is quite flat. One is again mechanically almost a vertical cliff face. So a poor would be there's no serious attempt to control pacing. Pass is the pacing is unclear. And again, it feels a little bit like it sits in between those two to me. Like they kind of control the pacing in one branch, but not the other.
Yeah, I think I would argue a little in favor of the pass in that one because the pacing is unclear, because it is so intermittent. But I do think that this one branch does have ascending pacing, but I wouldn't go beyond that because it is limited. And Santa's killed you.
Do you think
Um,
it's possible to kill Santa?
I mean, I think it must be. I think it might be a difficult game of wait for his fire breath to pass, run in and stab, and then
Oh, hide
change
behind the
direction.
pillars. Okay.
Yeah, hide
I,
behind pillar.
I suspect I'm probably not going to get back to there by the time we finish talking about techniques and
Yeah, that's
feedback, but we'll see.
that is true.
Okay, yeah, all right. So, all
So
right.
yeah, so
I will agree that it probably then sits on a pass because you're right. There is some ascendant, like we're getting closer and closer to Santa. Things become more tense, but there's definitely some rough edges there that could be polished. So,
yeah.
what about technique? So we've already touched on this a little bit.
So storytelling techniques. We have got a few game writing techniques here. We've got the exposition areas, which we're not the hugest fans of, but they are a mode of storytelling. We have
We've got the
the
cutscenes like this that sort of like the
yep.
little transitions. Again, they could have done a lot more with them. In fact, they could have sprinkled some of that exposition, line by line as the cutscene is happening. Or they could have, I think, as we already said, rather than just giving us the dump, like they could have had us pick up this present and then find out that it's empty. That would be a better way to convey the story.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. If you'd been, it's a nice morning, and here you go, and then you click and open the present, and then engage, say, Doom style heavy metal, where
Yeah.
you decide what you're going to do, then that would have been a way to tell that story.
So we're in an interesting situation here, which is it feels like they have used more than one technique, but they haven't actually used those techniques very successfully. So
So
pass would be partially successful attempt at using one technique. Satisfactory would be fully successful use of one technique. Good would be successful use of more than one technique.
yes,
And they
yeah,
have used more than
and I
one
didn't.
technique.
Yes, but that is the point. The pass is partially successful attempt to use at least one game writing technique. So they have attempted to use more than one, and I do think it is partially successful, but I don't know if I would say it's fully successful.
So that's the thing. I think yeah, it's definitely at least a pass. I think because of the fact that they've got multiple ones of these, and again, they're not all
Mhm.
fully successful, but I think maybe between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Again, like
And
they
that
could have
kind of
done.
brings us.
Sorry,
Oh,
I was just going to say they could have done a bit more with the cutscene as well. Like, for example, right at the end, rather than just another black screen with some text, just pan the
mm,
camera around to give us a little bit more closure. But yes, lastly, but
mm.
by no means leastly, feedback.
Yes. Now let me just bring up the old feedback form here. Um, so I'm just going to read this aloud. The feedback and response. So firstly, it was recommended to me that I should keep the scope of my game in check because I was doing the coursework by myself. I simplified my original narrative, reducing the number of endings that my story has. Originally, I considered using multiple different game genres to tell my story. I believed that different sections of the game world would suit a specific genre as well. My feedback from the lab was that for simplicity and immersion, I should try to choose a single genre and stick to it. I was worried about the amount of work involved in constructing a game with a narrative, given that usually this implies there could be a lot of animation and dialogue. I was reassured in the lab that the game did not have to present the story in an animated way. I chose to split the game into different sections. When the player moves from one section to another, a simple black screen is shown with text to tell the story to the player.
Okay, so let's focus on that last one for a second, because as we've already said, yep, they're quite correct in that we're not expecting fully rendered AAA like 3D pre-rendered cutscenes or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other ways to tell a story in your game that don't require huge animation budgets. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if we're taking the peaceful path, we get to the elves. We could actually. Here's a thought. I've not tried talking to the elves. I was going to say the elves have no dialogue; they just stare at you creepily. But let's actually just quickly go and check whether they do speak to you. But yeah, so and we already talked about this when we were talking about techniques. It's particularly
Mm-hmm.
as the work of one person. Yes, you do need to sort of make considerations in your scope and make sure that you're using
Mm-hmm.
your resources as best you can.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like, and again, the same with the audio. Like again, like the graphics being sort of like simplified actually lends like a really nice sort of cute tone to it. But
Mm-hmm.
completely dropping audio, even as the work of one person, is
Mm-hmm.
let's say a poor allocation of resources. It doesn't take much to just slap a backing track onto this, which would really liven it up, I think. And the same goes for those storytelling features. Yeah, I don't think we
Yeah,
can
and
talk
and,
enough.
and, and as just talking about allocation of resources, that train station scene, because it doesn't really resolve in anything beyond getting on a train which goes to the North Pole or getting on a train which ends the story. That could have that was time spent on a scene that doesn't really contribute a huge amount to the story, whereas instead transferring that into scenes that do involve some dialogue engagement could have been a better allocation of resource.
Okay, so with that in mind, a pass in this category would be the feedback was addressed, but the changes have had limited success. That feels kind of where we are. Like yes, they've definitely thought about what we said, but they haven't necessarily. The changes that they've made haven't been like as successful as perhaps they hoped.
Mm, mm. Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, uh,
Okay.
so any final thoughts for this one?
I really enjoyed some of the presentation here. I actually love a low poly game, and this kind of sort of creepy, slightly somewhat blackly humorous space was very enjoyable. And yeah, great job with the creepy elves.
Yeah, agreed. Like the undercurrent of humor in this is really really good, and it would be nice to see that sort of developed a little bit more. All right, so let's move on to our next game. All right, and our next game is Journey of Reflection. So, lovely title screen again. Nice sort of scenic view. We've got some soothing background music. We've got
Yeah,
a
it's
settings
lovely.
menu. So we've got a built-in volume slider, always very nice. There we go. We've got our controls. Be nice if
Yeah,
it was integrated into the game, but I'll do my best to remember it. And let's hit start.
Spacebar to attack, Tom. Very important.
Always spacebar. Okay. All right. So what's your guess? Are we king or are we knight?
I'm reckoning night. I'm guessing night.
You reckon night? You are correct. We are night.
Hey, I know about my hero's journey.
It would be interesting if we started as the king. I guess there are games where you start as the king. Night. The village of Eldergrove is under attack. To E to continue. An orc has come from the mountains, destroying homes and spreading. Nice use of colour in the text boxes to sort of emphasise keywords. In fact, really nice text boxes as well. Like, we've got a little
like
scroll telling us who's talking.
Very pretty.
Finest knights. So we sent out the finest knights, but they didn't come back. So now we're sending you. The orc will arrive at our gates tomorrow. You are the last hope. Again, nice little.
Classic Shrek rules. Oh, cool. We've got a few different responses here. Very nice.
Why me? Surely others are more capable. Well, they were, but if you were listening, he said they didn't come back. Yeah, there we go.
All the other stuff fallen off. Yep.
How far down the list were we? Like everyone else has gone.
That's why this hall is empty. Literally everyone else has attempted to fight this orc.
Everyone else has died, but don't let that frighten you. I'm sure you can do it.
The real friend is the brave we made along the way. A quest log? Nice. Oh, it is. Cool.
It is. Very nice. And again, formatted like it's not just a big sort of default Unity pop-up. It's formatted to look like a book. That's really nice. I don't know how we close it. I guess there we go. Off we go.
I like your little cape. Oh, and I like that the feather in your helmet is flapping.
Yeah, that's a nice little animation, isn't it? Ah, a wizard. Hello, mighty wizard. Knight summoned by the king himself, yet I see doubt clouding your heart. I wonder if that's because of the choice that we just made previously.
Guess we'll find out.
So now we have to go find the Mirror of Self-Worth. I'm very curious to replay this now and see if we get a different quest or it's framed differently. True strengths. I mean, he did just tell us, but we'll ask him again. Reflect not your appearance, but the truth of your character. Reach it, go north, into a swamp. Twisting paths, cave, mirror. Gotcha. So we can either go straight to the orc, or we can go find this mirror first. Side quest, lovely. Tradesman is planning to... Can't afford to lose him, he's our link to the outside world. Sure, I will help out.
Yeah.
Not like we've got anything else to do. I think she did just say where he was, and I wasn't listening. West of the village. There
it's in your quest log.
Oh yeah. Nope. Just like I said I would do it. Okay. Off we go.
Maybe you'll see him.
This looks like a port. Hello. I sure am, buddy. Been running gods through here for 15 years. Monsters, plagues, bandits. But this one orc...
Oh my.
Ooh, what happens if we do just say, actually, you know what, I don't want to go on the hero's journey.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, you want to find out?
Refusal of the call.
I really like how this is written. Like they've made it work with the feeling.
Okay, so a nice little epilogue at the end.
Whoa.
That's... Yeah, we're not marking like creative writing as part of this process, but that is some really nice writing. I like that.
Yeah, I'm genuinely... I know we're not marking creative writing in this, but writing the style of sort of ending all messages to the register, which is that it's an RPG, is great. Like I'm just happy to see that because it means your game designer is thinking about what makes a cohesive game that feels like a place. that feels like a whole story.
Ah, okay, so we don't get different dialogue or a different quest from the wizard. That's a bit of a shame. But yeah, you're right. Like writing is hard.
Writing is hard, and like even an attempt to write to register and make things feel meaningful through rhetoric is a great. It's lovely to see.
So something I was going to say, it's slipped my mind. Ah, no, there we go. So when we got that ending, we got this is the abandonment ending. Here you go. You sort of get that. Oh, okay, there's multiple endings. Let's collect them all, kind of a thing. It would be nice if on like the start screen there was like another menu sort of displaying that collection.
Like a little achievement tracker.
Yeah. A, to highlight that there are multiple endings for you to find, and B, so we know if we found them all. And C, because that kind of collection dynamic, it's really nice if you can say, look at all of the endings that I have found. Aren't I good at game? He maybe has a point.
It's true.
Oh no.
Oh.
I chose the wrong thing.
I wasn't impressed. It's okay. Maybe there's other people who will help you. Oh, there's this little guy.
What is my approach? Even with fear in your heart, face what comes. Focus on protecting others. Know your enemy's weakness. Which should we pick?
Well, which speaks to your heart, Tom?
Turning it back around on me.
Yeah.
Well, so this playthrough, I said I am a big brave knight. I'm sure I can do this. So let's go with.
All right, there you go.
Okie doke. I don't know what effect that has necessarily had. Other than just...
Your gear is ready.
Yeah. Was it not ready before? I feel like maybe it should have been if I was... Hello, are you friend? Oh no.
Egg.
Oh, no, I accidentally stabbed the dragon. My only child, please night penner.
You gotta rescue the egg.
What does your egg look like? You seem angry. What?
Angry little mushroom.
Okay, it turns out. Hang on, let me just. There we go.
Were you just hitting spacebar?
Yep. So I will say there's maybe a dominant strategy here.
You did lose 1/2 of a heart.
Yeah, I tried seeing if I could just hold down spacebar.
Yeah. Ooh, this guy looks spoopy.
You seem fine.
Whoa.
I mean, we didn't judge the dragon book by its cover. Why should we judge a necromancer? He seems like an upstanding citizen. Their lives are worth any price.
I mean, he is standing up and gently bouncing up and down, so... Sure
just like us. We've got so much in common. Grant me the wisdom to understand what comes. I want... if a line ever says it's worth any price, that's probably the good option, right?
It's usually, it's like, well, any price it will be.
Ooh, I like those algo texts. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Pact is... I've got a good feeling about this.
When a pact is sealed, that it's going to end well.
Yeah.
Power.
Ooh, he's
disappeared as well.
That's kind of nice.
If someone disappears after you've spoken to them. He's got the egg.
Alright. Bold choice, friend.
Yeah. Get him.
Yeah. Alright. That's...
Yeah.
Yeah. Egg.
Does this game have an inventory, or is it just the quest log that sort of says?
I think just the quest log. Hands haven't stopped shaking the power field. Yeah, it's fine. There's a lot going on in this. Like, we've got a lot of different like little side quests and like a nice overarching plot. So we'll talk about this in more detail as we go through, which we'll probably do in a second. The combat itself feels a little bit lacking, but I get the sense that that's not, the main purpose of this. The main purpose is to go around interacting with people and making a bunch of choices.
Yeah. I'm kind of fine with the combat not being the most developed system in the world because what we're focusing on here is an interconnected network of little stories, characters, and side quests.
Well, is it interconnected? They all seem kind of siloed at the minute, but you're right.
I mean that's fair.
Oh,
I mean that would have been unconnected, but you've already spoken to them.
Already gone and done that,
yeah.
Thanks for the warning. Okay, and I can't go back and re-ask him about something. Now, there was a reason I came to the swamp, wasn't there? I forgot. Oh, magic mirror, that's right.
Is it the mirror?
Yes, cave.
So while you found it. So while you're engaging with the mirror, shall I have a little look here at the marks criteria?
Yeah, let's start talking about the overall quality. So presentation, style.
I think the presentation is lovely. You've got backing music, you've got sound effects, you've got little different people to talk to. It all is consistent. Except this guy.
So I'm leaping ahead a little bit, but it feels like we're kind of missing a bit of a climax if we're told we have to go and save everyone from the orc, and then
there's no. It would be nice to have that boss battle. Really would be nice to have that.
But yes, sorry, presentation, information, all of that. But obviously,
presentation is there. Information is complete. It works together. It sounds nice. The things seem to have consistent sprites and sizes. For me, that puts it into the good category because it's complete and effective to me. Possibly even excellent because it is complete, effective, and appealing.
I would say there's probably enough little flourishes, like the fact that the inventory is not inventory, the quest log is displayed as a book. The fact that they've gone to the trouble of again, probably from an asset pack, but the fact that they thought to say I will make the extra effort to go and get an asset pack that fits nicely together, and changing the color of the dialogue and just little touches like that is the sort of thing I think that brings it up to probably the excellent level.
Nice. I agree with that. I think the only thing holding it back from sort of prizeworthy, and this is kind of thinking about mechanics, is it would be nice to have because interacting with things is important here. Like you get the egg, it would be nice to have that communicated, and it would be nice to have things like enemy health bars communicated, and that's the only thing that sort of holds it back from prizeworthy to me.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
But excellent. I would definitely agree.
Okay.
Meaningful play. Are you having fun, Tom?
So, I'm enjoying the writing. How do I feel about the play? Again, so I've already mentioned the combat is a bit lackluster, but again, that's not the focus of what they're going for. The focus is mostly talking to people and trying to negotiate things. So this is a good example, actually. The tradesman, you decide to convince him. So you're saying, the village needs everyone to help, and we have to decide. It's not like convince him or don't convince him. We're given two options for how we might want to convince him, and we have to think about, is this person going to be motivated by honor? Are they going to be more pragmatic? So it feels like that's where they've sort of put most of the emphasis on this. So I would say, overall it's Like it's obviously playable. Like there's
Yes.
maybe not a huge number of mechanics, but the controls are very usable. We haven't seen any bugs. Does it reach good? So for good, it would need to be engaging, which is to say reasonably
Yes.
complex with multiple mechanics. I don't know if we're quite there.
Yeah, I don't know how complex you could say it is in terms of mechanics and mechanical control and interactions.
So like mechanically, what have we got? We've got like obviously the dialogue and the choices. Is there like an underlying inventory? I imagine it's more, like flags on dialogue rather than we're actually carrying an egg or something like that. But it's obvious that like getting the egg is a mechanic. The combat itself like is present. Again, it's maybe not the focus of their attention. So maybe between a satisfactory and a good. There's definitely a few different things going on, but it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily that higher level of complexity.
I think that's fair, yeah. So I'll put it halfway between satisfactory. Now, onto the story engine, the big guns. So game world to story. How is the game world affecting the story?
So this is the thing. Almost all of the effects we've seen so far have been in the story side of things. So the dialogue choices we're making and so on. It's not like the gameplay element of it. So the way that we fight things or the amount of things that we fight has an impact on the story later down the line. So if, for example, the necromancer had said, if you want my powers, go out and kill three innocent people, and then we have to go out and actually kill them, that would be sort of a very clear example of gameplay affecting the story. So do they mention in their game notes what they consider their story engine to be doing on that side of things?
Sorry, game world to story, right? They have listed the NPC dialogue adds depth to the story.
Okay.
I'm not sure that really is game world affecting the story. That's just storytelling.
That's just how they're telling the story, and we'll get to that. So another example, though, along those lines would be, if I'd gone out and killed all the mushroom people, then the thief says something along the lines of, "Oh my God, you killed all of those mushroom people. Here, have the egg," or something like that. Like NPCs changing their reaction based on the things that we have done in the game world.
Yeah.
Okay, so
there's a few others.
Choosing to kill the thief and get the egg, and then that changes the story. Okay, yeah. So there are definitely.
Okay, yeah. You can kill the thief, get the egg. That is a thing. There's other ones where environmental design enhancing the visual narrative. I would say that's true, but it doesn't really change the story.
That's not the game. That's still not story engine. That's, as you say, storytelling. That's the environment conveys some of the story, but it's not things I'm doing in the game changing the story.
There was exploration revealing story. Exploration of the game world unlocks hidden narrative elements such as the magic mirror's power, adding depth.
That feels like a bit of a reach, in so much as it's saying, as you progress through the story, you progress through the story.
Maybe the magic mirror is the magic mirror optional? And they have mentioned here as the fun thing, they have mentioned optional events, optional content such as convincing the boatman, aiding the mushroom spirits. Oh, you could aid them, or retrieving the dragon's egg enhances the main story by offering additional context, demonstrate the impact of player's choice on the narrative. So there are things like, as you said, killing the thief means you can retrieve the dragon egg and take that to the dragon.
Oh, is this not?
Hello? You can't hear me.
Sorry, I'm trying to get this egg.
No. It just went very, I couldn't hear the sound effects either for a second there. Sorry, folks. I thought I'd entered the shadow realm for a second.
There we go. It's slightly little glitch
I'm just
in maybe
having a
some.
look here to see if things like making friends with the dragon means that you get a dragon helping you.
Even that might be story to get. So it's interesting. There's a whole bunch of different side quests in there. But what do they change? So that is something that we should look into.
So I'm looking here at the narrative structure, and it does seem quite complex in terms of which things you get. There are different endings. If you can indeed skip the magic mirror, which is story to game world. If you go to the necromancer, the mushroom spirits. Who you interact with does seem to affect. Sorry, the structure is a little confusing here. You've got things like endings like the abandonment ending, and then the death ending, and then through the magic mirror. If your bravery is higher, or your intelligence is higher, or your kindness is higher, then that will give you different endings.
But how do we? So here's the thing, right? I convinced the traveler to stay. I spoke to the blacksmith and gave him a bunch of wisdom about fear and whatnot. Maybe I should have gone back to the maid to like turn in that quest. But why? Can you tell me why I got the failure ending? Because I don't know.
I'm not sure, I must say. I was skipping ahead a little bit to agency there because even looking at the structure, I'm not 100% on which variables affect what. And I do think that these have been noted as variables that log in the background, which is cool, but it needs to be a conscious choice. For example, you can if you go to the bishop.
Oh, I didn't even see the bishop before. Let's talk to the bishop.
Yeah. If you speak to the bishop and ask him how to help mushroom spirits compassionately, then you can go to the mushroom spirits and have a gentle conversation with them, and that affects and that raises your kindness, for example. I'm pretty sure is the line there. You can also I'm not sure what influences intelligence or bravery levels. There's definitely complexity in this story engine, in this narrative structure, and I can see that they've gone for trying to build up like a multiple act kind of thing with the different spaces, but I'm not sure it's come off entirely successfully.
Yeah, so game world story. Okay, so again, given that the gameplay that they're choosing to emphasize is sort of the dialogue and interaction with the NPCs rather than I don't want to call it traditional gameplay like combat, but let's say the other aspects of gameplay that they've got. It's a bit difficult to separate what is a game action and what is a story action in this case. Yes, the more that we explore, the more story we find. I would say that's maybe a bit of a stretch. So here's the thing, right? It's the case that our stats always change through dialogue rather than through actions that we take in the game, as far as I can see. So it's not a case of if we go around killing the mushroom monsters, our bravery goes up, and therefore we get a different story choice. So it feels like there is maybe support for the game impacting the story, but it's maybe a bit limited.
I think that's probably fair. So, would you feel like because there is support for story elements in the game world? in those things they've mentioned with developing, what you see the story as the story goes, you can find as you go through the game world, you find more story. That counts as support for story elements, but there is no effect, and that would put it into the poor category.
So I think it's definitely above a poor. I would say maybe between a poor and a pass, maybe at a pass. Because, for example, again, if we stretch what we're talking about when we say gameplay, making those choices of do we fight the thief or not? Like, do we return the egg? That changes the trajectory of the story. I'm not sure the effect that it has on the ending, because it seems like we can complete a whole bunch of side quests and then still just lose to the orc in a fade to black epilogue. But there's definitely support for it, and there's definitely some examples of where it impacts it. But I'm not convinced that the way they've described it in their game notes mean they fully understood what they were trying to achieve with this. So saying, the I can't remember the first point they made now, but the saying that we use different scenery to convey story is nice, and it's a great technique, and we'll talk about that later. But that's not what we're talking about when we say story engine. We want our actions in the game world to change the course of the story.
Yeah, having a coherent visual language that goes with your story isn't quite the same as the game world affecting the story.
So I would say it's still probably the pass, because again, if we talk about if we're able to convince the NPCs of something, that's going to change. Does it actually change? Now that I've said that, does that change the story? Because we've done a bunch of quests.
That's the thing. I'm not sure. I know it changes I believe it changes sort of the end resolution you are given. But I still think. But yeah. And that is pure story as well, because it's the story you're told at the end.
I think that's it's maybe not. They don't maybe revisit some of these things at the end as much as they could to tie everything back together. But just the fact that the guy says he'll stay now is. Yeah, and the fact that the maid's dialogue changes as a result. You know what? Yeah, so I think it's at least a pass.
And the converse, story to game world. Now we don't really see different things. We don't, there isn't sort of hidden spaces that you can and cannot find. However, there are definitely elements like, if you've spoken to the bishop and done a specific dialogue tree, then the mushroom spirits won't attack. So that is definitely a case where the story impacts the game world. Similarly, if you talk to the dragon, then the dragon asks, can you go and get the egg? And if you don't do that, then I assume you can't ask the thief for the egg.
So
I would say that there are some examples where the story does affect the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hey, now I can talk. So there you go. Like that is, I think, the strongest example that we've seen of that is by making a set of story actions. These things are no longer hostile, and now we can interact with them in a different way. And to a lesser extent, although we kind of already covered this from the other perspective, depending on our dialogue choice with the thief, we can either convince him to just hand over the egg, or we have to fight him. So it does have an impact on gameplay. So I think story to game world is probably stronger than game world to story, even though it's still a little bit sparse. So I would say,
For me, I would say satisfactory, because there are some examples.
Yeah,
definitely more than one, and they do seem to have like a fairly clear effect. Onto agency. There's definitely a lot of choices.
Here's a question. Looking at this particular choice, what do you think I should pick?
Ooh. Gosh.
So some of the choices like this,
softly?
Some of the choices are quite good. So when we spoke to the tradesperson, we got two very similar dialogue options. One sort of, appealing to honor, one appealing to pragmatism. That's kind of nice. That's a thing that we can sort of like reason about. We can sort of decide, which do I think this person would be more persuaded by? What kind of even if we want to sort of extend it a bit further and sort of say, well, I'm role playing as a valiant and heroic knight, of course he'd say this. There's a lot of interesting decisions we can make around that. This one then may be a bit too similar. This feels like I'm just sort of going to have to pick at random because I don't know what the consequential outcome would be. So I think a lot of their choices are pretty good. The choice with the necromancer, I know we hammed it up a little bit, but yeah, if there's a big existential threat facing you, how far are you going to go? That's a really interesting choice to ask.
Whereas, this kind of falls into the something I see in games I do see this in games which have a strong role play element where it's kind of it gets quite into the minutiae of choices, and to the extent where I'm like, I know I want to be a lawful good boy, but they both seem like such lawful good boy options, and then it turns out I've insulted someone's mother and I have no idea. Oh no.
I'm really sad now. I thought I could save the mushrooms.
Genuinely
a little bit sad now, yeah. Oh no.
Look at them. Look what you've done. This is kind of what I mean. Like, that's the sad outcome. But nonetheless, so there is a lot of interesting richness of choices, but I'm not sure how important it all is. Have you tried siding with the thief, by the way? Is that an option that you can get?
It didn't even occur to me.
Because I'm watching you save the dragon egg every time. So there are interesting choices, I think. Especially that now you've seen an interesting thing with the mushrooms.
Definitely interesting choices.
You can say there are interesting choices, but how are we on attempts to manage player agency?
How do they manage our agency? There are certain small things.
There are attempts to do so.
Yeah, there are certain small things, like for example I was going to say, this is maybe a poor example of that, which is to say I can just sort of run around all of this bit.
Leave the game world.
That's not particularly
leaving the game world to go and run away with the tradesperson is a nice example of agency. Saying you're no hero to the king, that's quite nice.
Actually, yeah.
Using the necromantic ending, that's pretty strong.
So I was going to say, like, on a smaller scale, just the fact that there is a path through the village to show you where they want you to go to find the rest of the story is a nice touch. But also, yeah, having that little extra freedom of saying, you know what, screw this village, I'm out of here. Like, again, really nice touch. Bits like this bit, every time I've spoken to the mirror, it said, there's something lacking, and I don't know why that is. That's the bit that I think is a problem, because it's not as obvious why this is happening, when I think that I feel like I did a good job this time. Please tell me that I did a good job, mirror. Yeah, again, you've yet to discover yourself. None of these have taken root in your heart. So what have I not done? Every time I've got
maybe it's that you haven't. Maybe it's because maybe all of your goodnesses are equal. Maybe you haven't picked one over the other. But in the diagram here, it's all values equal to 0, which is to me indicates they're using variables for this.
This to me almost feels like a bug at this stage.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused as to what you could be doing to not set values to 0.
And again, it's either, I would say, maybe a bug in their story engine, or it's a case of like poor design and balancing, or poor information design even, although we've praised it for the rest of their information design. It's not obvious. So for example, the highlighted text and things like that, that is a perfect use case for just giving a little nudge and a little nod to what each of these things are happening. So if our options were, one was blue, one was red, one was yellow, then it would at least be more consistent of, okay, if I always pick the yellow option, I'm probably always raising the kindness stat or something like that. But as it is, I don't know what my current values are.
Yeah,
some of the dialogue I don't know how to...
And you're a little bit like, I don't know what this wants from me. So I think that also in terms of agency means that we're sort of prevented from going into the excellent category because there are attempts to manage player agency, but I don't know if we've reached the point of having a network of interesting choices and an effective system for managing player agency, because the system is a little, in some places, not fully effective because we're not quite sure what more you could be doing.
So it did mention, you don't have to go and find this mirror. You can just go straight to the orc. Can we just go straight to the orc? I think we kind of have to go to the mirror first. Because there is no orc. There's a fade to black that tells us about the orc.
I think it did that. If you go straight to the necromancer, it was a path from the necromancer in the story structure.
Okay. So I think another failure ending. Yeah. Okay, so what about the?
So have you had failure ending every time apart from the running away endings?
Running away and necromancer, but other than that, failure every time.
Other than that, failure. Interesting. So if you did a kindness one potentially, could we do that with a complete non-violence where you went to the bishop?
That's what I did last time.
When you did that, did you fight the thief? Did you convince him nicely?
Well, so here's again with the lack of clarity in some of those decisions. I thought the kindness option would be, tell the thief, this is the right thing to do. Don't be mean, be kind, give it back. And he went, nah, stab me. So my kind of options are to just say, look, the dragon knows you took it, you probably should give it back, or to just stab him straight away, I guess. True strength. So bravery, compassion, or intellect. So okay, and again, which of these choices has been about intellect? Yeah. If I say I don't have time for this.
Okay, so would we say that the agency is satisfactory because there are a number of interesting choices, or good, a number of interesting choices and attempts to manage player agency?
I think it's probably good.
Okay.
I don't think it hits excellent because it's maybe not necessarily an effective system for managing agency, because some of these decisions I'm definitely left a little bit confused by. But okay, so let's talk about the techniques that they've used.
Pacing first?
You're right. Let's talk about the pacing of the game. So this kind of ties into what they were saying earlier, where they were like, we've got different environments. So we go from the king's court to the village, to the swamp, to the cave. We're getting more and more dangerous terrain mechanically, and to a lesser extent, dramatically as well. The gameplay is very similar all the way throughout, right? There's we speak to the king, we speak to everyone in the village, we speak to everyone in the swamp. Nothing hugely changes or progresses. There are certain conversations that are perhaps a bit more dramatic, so negotiating with the thief, chatting to the necromancer.
Yeah, there are moments of varied pacing. For example, the little storyline with the mushroom spirits was a genuine moment of difference and interest. Leaving with the tradesman, it was a curtailed ending, but it still felt like you had made a choice and it wasn't just game over. However, the fact that there is no sort of final battle, even if it were still simple mechanics, does feel like it sort of is a dead stop. And because we're not quite sure what we're doing, the pacing does sometimes feel a bit unclear. So it's sometimes varied and not in a good way. We don't know that we're definitely going up, especially because, as you say, even though the areas are different in theme, then don't feel that different to play. Like the tension doesn't really feel like it's rising.
Yeah, it is to an extent. And so we go from receiving the call to adventure, deciding whether we take it or not. Are we acquiring the means? It doesn't really feel like it, and I think that ties into some of the things we already said earlier. And then like the climactic moment in the game is talking to the mirror and being judged. But again, that's very removed from like gameplay or decisions. There's no climactic choice that we have to make of how are you going to face this orc? Are you going to use your bravery or your compassion? And particularly in like obviously the final confrontation with the orc is sort of hand waved and given in an epilogue. What you would really like to see in this is, you know, if you've maxed out your compassion stat, having to talk to the orc, having to show that compassion, having to, again, sort of like mechanically show off everything that you've learned throughout the game, but also to have that real dramatic climax at the end of the story. So I don't think so unfortunately I don't think it hits the good, because it's lacking that clear final peak.
I think it does hit the some ascending pacing potentially, which is the satisfactory.
Yeah, it's if anything, that's what really highlights the lack of a peak, that we are always building to this, and then it just sort of happens off screen, as it were. So yeah, I think it probably hits the satisfactory. What about techniques?
Now we are on, yes, indeed, the storytelling techniques. So we've got dialogues. We've got the sort of narrative summary at the end.
Which again is, you know, a low budget cutscene, and we are all about doing things like low budget and within the scope that you've got.
Absolutely, it's not. It is not a like world changing cutscene mechanic, but it is a story. It is a way to tell a story. So we have got 2. Are there any others?
I think they're the main 2. I thought I spoke to the... Oh no, I spoke to the bishop, but I did say I'll put them out of their misery.
Suffer, mushrooms, suffer.
Well, I figured this time I would try the, you know... I get calling it bravery is weird, but I will solve my problems with violence.
Solve my problems with violence. So I would say, and I do think the dialogue is very good. And there are, you know, the nice little choices. The thing that would have improved it potentially is, as you say, tying those dialogue choices into your compassion, bravery, and intelligence trees. So I could say that would be. I would put in the satisfactory category. We've got fully successful use of at least one game writing technique. Which I think would be fair. Another example of them managing agency.
Just to nip back a little bit, I can't go back to the village once I've gone this far. That's a classic example of saying, you've got to this bit of the story, you've got to keep going forwards now.
Okay, that's quite cool. Yeah.
I would say they're close to having 2 techniques that are fully successful. I think you're right; they could have expanded on one a bit more than the other. So, do you think maybe between a satisfactory and a good, or do you think good?
I think we can say that's a successful use of more than one game writing technique. They've got their, you know, it's not. Yeah. I think we could probably.
What's got you on the fence?
What's got me on the fence is that the end cutscenes. Are they fully successful? They do start to feel a bit samey, but they do the job, and they have done it pretty well. So yes, let's go with good on that one. At this point, this would also be where we start thinking, though, about how the game writing techniques support the theme. I'm not sure what the theme is here.
Yeah, do they mention that in their notes?
I'm just looking now, and it's the stag at the pool. Players guide a knight on a journey to discover his true value, bravery, intelligence, or kindness. The game highlights the importance of understanding and embracing one's real strengths, and I think that is fair.
I think because of what we've already spoken about, though, because it's not clear from the choices. Again, I'm genuinely at the stage where I'm now. Is this bugged and we're always getting this ending because of that, or is it because I'm fundamentally misunderstanding what I should be saying to these NPCs? That I don't think it can necessarily quite hit.
So I don't think we can take it beyond good. I think that's fair. And finally, to the feedback. Okay, so feedback time. Okay. We've got a few things here. We've got enriching storytelling techniques. We were suggested that using only dialogue to tell a story might not fully engage players. Adding other storytelling elements could be more dynamic and immersive. So they added the diary, and that we didn't think about in the dialogues when we were talking about that actually. But yes, they used the diary quest system and it is a diary where the knight is recording his thoughts. That's quite cool.
Actually, yeah. But let's revisit that for a second.
Yeah.
That solidly puts them in the good for techniques because that is
where
really
I
successful.
was a bit. Ooh.
It's not.
No, that is successful. Well done.
Yeah, it's not just
optional events.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to move on to adding optional events. They were recommended to make the story more engaging by including content that enhances the main storyline. So things like the dragon egg, that was one. Convincing the boatman, that they added that, and aiding the mushroom spirits. So I think very good job there. Again, in interpreting and adding that feedback really did develop this into a more multifaceted story where story is affecting the game world. So that was, I think, quite successful. And finally, expanding the endings. They were suggested to expand the endings rather than focusing solely on winning outcomes to make the story more engaging and meaningful. They were given 3 win endings. And then there were also the failure endings and the hidden dark endings through the necromancer's dialogue. Oh, and there was one more, which was that they were encouraged to add sound effects, including background music, which they have done, and is very nice.
Okie doke. So, in fact, yeah, we've already spoken about the the focus being more on discussing things with NPCs and focusing on dialogue and trying to get the right answers to quests and so on. If they didn't have all these extra optional side missions, the combat would stand out as being perhaps even more lacking if that was their main focus before. So I think the shift to adding these different side quests and ways to show off your bravery or compassion or intelligence worked very nicely.
So for me, because they interpreted what we were saying about it needing more in terms of engaging the storyline, I would put that into feedback has been interpreted and addressed, and the changes have been successful, which would put it into the excellent category. How do you feel about that?
I maybe wouldn't go quite that far. So some of the changes are good but trivial. So obviously adding audio definitely massively improved it, but that's not a thing that they've interpreted. They've just added the audio, and yes, it's made it better. The focus on the endings, having the sort of the necromancer ending, the dark ending, and again, I think we already said that was one of the more interesting choices. So yeah, I agree with that. Although because we haven't been able to see the other endings, it's difficult to say about sort of the focus on the good endings so much.
And for me, it's also the fact that they added the night diary. Because sure, some of the things have been more trivial, but these things have definitely, I think, made a difference to the marking criteria, or at least done a good job in supporting them.
Getting that into the monologue is very nice.
Good because it is successful.
I would say maybe between good and excellent. I don't know if it quite hits excellent itself.
That's fair. I'm happy with that. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. This is a very beautiful game, and I'm very impressed by how you have exercised your creative writing chops. Even though that's not really something we mark for, I think you did a good job pitching the register of writing to the style of game, and it is undeniably a very pretty game as well.
Right, so let's move on to our next game. All right, and our last game for this is Classroom Clash. So again, nice little animated title screen.
Enjoying those little foxes having a symmetrical but different coloured dance.
We've got Fox and Evil Fox, presumably. Let's jump in. So we've got no sound, but nice little animation. A little cutscene to start us off. Space to continue. Watch where you're going.
They bumped into each other. It's true.
It's the Fox Meet Cute. Look at how fast you were running. So this isn't necessarily the tortoise and the hare. This is the fox and the fox. You can never keep up with me. You're just this is actually a rabbit that looks like a fox, and this is a tortoise that looks like a green fox. Okay. I'll show you how little speed matters. Okay, it is a hare and a tortoise. It's fine.
It is the hair of the tortoise. This is gonna be a niche reference here, but the vibe of them facing off against each other reminds me of the game A Short Hike, where there's a really intense little bird who really wants you to know how good he is at climbing things.
That's a deep cut, but yes, that is a fantastic game. Let's start with hare. Click on the actual hare button.
Sometimes I like to demonstrate that I do actually know about games and play them.
Okay, we can't be the hare. Let's be the tortoise. Okay, we can't be the tortoise. So let's just pause the recording there. Alright, after a little bit of trial and error, we can't click on these buttons, but do you know what we can do? We sure can press spacebar on them. So there we go. Don't know what controls we use now though. WSD. That seems to work.
WASD?
Yep.
Nice. Oh, there is an actual bunny there.
There is.
Talk to the bunny.
What button do you think I pressed to talk to the bunny? Maybe space. Probably space, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, hare. I'm sorry I didn't have any lunch money the other day. I have some now if you want it. Wait, are we hare or is this a hare? Because they look a lot more like a hare than we do. But
they
chose
do look
to
more
be
like
hare.
a hare, but it did specifically say your name is Hare.
It did. So give me that. You better have some more. So okay. So not only are we
that
hare,
bunny.
we are an absolute. I'm trying to think of words that I'm allowed to say on YouTube. A not very nice person. Keep it. Get out of my sight. Let's lean into this. Cool. We got some stats. Do you want to take a guess at what any of those stats mean?
I'm guessing sociability, strength, brains, and speed.
Yeah, actually, that I was going to guess the exact same thing. So you know what? Maybe those symbols are actually sufficient.
Yeah, like
why still here?
Get out of here, bunny.
All right. So a little bit of inconsistency in some of the visuals. Like we've got a real low pixel avatar and a real high pixel CRT television up there. Okay. Hey, have you studied for the bit? Of course. Do you?
The other thing that I find a bit odd with this is that the main text is below the responses, which is a bit odd in terms of information design.
I think that's supposed to say, of course not. But let's pick that. Ooh, yep, smarts went down. Ooh.
Ooh, yeah. Bribes.
Alright, so it looks like most of the gameplay.
It's that little bird we evicted.
It is the little bird that we. Why do you care? You know what? I like bird. Bird is good. Bird is friend.
Yeah, bird is friend.
Yeah. Everyone else? No. Bird, friend. Yeah, confidence. So this is what it's like to be confident. I heard that Tortoise has been having steroids to prepare for the. Yeah, that sounds true.
Whoa.
I should.
You should tell everyone in school. Everyone should know.
Up to you, dear. We got
Probably.
there. So okay, so for this, like, gameplay is mostly wandering around and sort of having dialogue with people, but it's kind of interesting that we've got these different stats to juggle. So
yeah, I like that there is a visual representation of the decisions you are making, and they are stats. And although you're right, the difference between the sprites and the background is a bit odd, I kind of like that they move and that they are clearly the animal they are representing, and they've got kind of different personalities.
And the thing is, like if it was just talking to a bunch of people and then having a race, there wouldn't be much gameplay there. I mean, there's still maybe a limited amount. I think there's maybe still they could have done more with, but having to interpret what each of those responses is, the effect each of those responses might have on our stats, and then thinking about which of those stats that we want to maximize. So, I mean, speed sounds good. I'm not sure how any of the others is necessarily going to help us in the race,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll find out.
Maybe we'll find out. Yeah.
Yes, I'm ready to go. I'm feeling pretty good, actually. So again, this feels like where those stats might have more of an impact on the dialogue. Like if we've got mega speed, then why would we be exhausted?
Yeah. Get some juice. Delicious juice.
Bird is friend. What's your favorite hobby? Clout chasing.
Clap chasing.
Nah, brah. Going to the gym, brah. I like binge. That's interesting.
This bird watches traitors. Ew, that's lame.
No, bird is friend.
Oh yeah, bird is friend. Okay.
Have you? Excuse me?
How dare you?
I guess because they're a reindeer, they're friends with Santa.
That's true.
I assume that's what they're going for. Everyone,
yeah.
Everyone should fear me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
What?
Fish fear me.
What?
Oh. 20.
2, right? Yeah, of course.
It is
Yes.
2, yeah.
It took me a hot second.
Same as 25%
It's
of
20.
8.
That's the trick, isn't it? What's the capital of Djibouti? I assume Djibouti. What is the term for the deception of the mind's perception of a stimuli?
Definitely photosynthesis.
I love photosynthesis. Oh yeah. Why am
I love photosynthesis.
Why am I being good at quiz? I am. Who cares about knowing things? What does the fox say?
Man, this deer better be the teacher because I'm gonna. Otherwise, I want this fox to just like punch the deer. It's like, don't ask me questions.
That's what the crazy frog says, not the fox.
That's true. Oh, warthog.
I just need to do some sit-ups first. No.
So the complete aside, some friends of mine are philosophers living in Austria, and one of them wrote an entire position paper on like meta ethics, and it's titled "Yes, I'd Still Love You if You Were a Worm," and it's specifically dedicated to his wife.
That's very good. I hope you've been nice to the other students. You never know. Foreshadow, foreshadow, foreshadow. Are you ready to go? Yes, I'm ready to go. Alright. It feels like we don't necessarily need to move to it. Like, we've kind of got so far 3 different acts. It's just the same room.
You get the picture.
Yeah. 1 fish, 2 fish. You're stupid, bear. Why are you being weird? Who needs friends when you have bird? This conversation filled me with a quoting Undertale.
They've definitely filled out all the. Actually, marking it.
That made my strength go up. That made my mind go up.
I think.
What's the relation between that and our stats, do you think?
Yeah, I feel like when they started making this, there was some definite like, okay, the stats are going to do this and this, and possibly as deadline approached, madness sank in.
It feels like we got to a certain point and they were like, right, we need to think of X many more dialogue lines. I don't know, man, just write whatever. Yeah. Trust me, you do not want my... Actually, apparently you might want my chemistry notes. I thought I'd been picking all of the bad options, but no, I have brain. Oh, interesting. Because I didn't share my notes, my brain went up again.
Well, it would be cheating. No, it wouldn't. Ooh, a gift.
My speed's already max.
Determination.
What do we think determination? Is that strength? That feels like strength. Yeah.
Feels like strength.
Or
Yeah.
feels like arm. Arm is determination, not strength. Good to know.
Ah, there we go.
So I'm pretty good at all of the important stats for running, which is to say
Yep.
running, brain, and arm. Not very good at group of people. It is time.
That's
Let's
okay.
do this. Dun, 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 dun.
Running is not a team sport.
Oh, I'm. This is a cutscene. I'm not actually doing anything here. Ooh.
Oh.
Oh no! I mean, oh boy, quick time
Big
events,
jump.
my favorite. That is a very fast tortoise.
But he's also a fox. His name is just Tortoise.
Oh, is it? So am I supposed to press
I think
this
so.
as
That's
soon as...
like your name is Hare.
No, I was saying like the quick time events. I was assuming because the okay, so it's
Oh.
because the border was getting closer to the square. I assumed I had to time it right, but no, it looks like I just have to press it as soon as possible, and that one I have to. Okay,
That
so
one you had to mash, I think.
what did any of those stats do to that race? Because I had full stats on everything, and it was it's cycling through endings.
It is cycling through and endings.
Because I definitely just got ending 0. I lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now I win.
And then it went, you won. Congrats.
Okay, let's try that again.
Okay, while you go through that again, I'm gonna look at some marking criteria here.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. Presentation, graphics, audio, and information design. I know you're not a huge fan of the graphics because they're a bit
I'm not. I don't
muddled, but they're
I don't hate the
serviceable.
graphics. I would say there's maybe some inconsistencies, and I would also say there's no audio, which is a bit of a shame.
It is a bit of a shame. This would have been a wonderful time to have just like a weird animal noise trigger when you click an animal, like when you interact with an animal. Just like give me a little tweet, give me a little bunny sniffle. Doesn't matter what it is. The information design, I again think is actually serviceable. I quite like the different stats up in the top left, and the situation of having the dialogue options above the dialogue box is weird, but not the end of the world. So somewhere between workable and. So somewhere between satisfactory and good, maybe, for me?
Sorry, I'm focusing on quick time events right now.
Yeah,
satisfactory and good? Yeah, I think so. I think the lack of audio really is... It is a real shame because like just slapping a backing track over this and like you say some generic animal noises when you speak to the animals would have vastly improved it. How did they win? We won that time. Ending 4 of 5, but why 4 of 5 and not 0 of 5? I'm so confused because I got all of the quick time events perfectly that time and it looked like I was in the lead. Is it because I didn't do enough with the stats? Which of those stats impacted this? Because surely speed is the only one that matters.
As you ran, it seemed to trigger like a neck and neck effect. Like you did all the quick time events or whatever, and then got to the finish line. It was like we're neck and neck, and then it went okay. You lose now.
So either of those quick time events, though, because that's the thing, right? The previous one, I not even deliberately messed them up. I just messed up all of the quick time events. But then I still got the neck and neck, and then the you win. So maybe it's only stats that matter and not that. Okay.
Presumably you did because your stats were great in that time. But yeah, so do we think satisfactory or good, or maybe even somewhere between the two for this one?
I think between a satisfactory and a good, I think. Actually, no. Given the complete lack of audio, I think I would lean more towards satisfactory. Like it's definitely workable, but effective with some inconsistencies. I think is probably fair. No, we were able to work out what most of the UI meant. But so I think it still probably hits a satisfactory. I actually would be tempted to sort of maybe have it towards a pass. But I think if you like, I think you're right. You know, the actual like sprites of all the animals are consistent, if not the environment that they're in, the presentation of the race, some of the information design around the QTEs is maybe not obvious at first glance, but I think satisfactory is probably where it's
I mean, I played AAA games and had no idea what they wanted me to do when it reaches a quick time scene. So I lean towards being a little generous in those things, because it's like, do a thing and your immediate response is to panic. Meaningful play, mechanics, bugs, and controls. Are you having fun, Tom?
I am playing. I don't know if I'm having that much fun, and that's partly because, again, it's the link between these dialogues and the stats is not clear, and the link between the stats and the climactic race is not clear.
I think that's fair.
I'm enjoying reading some of the silly dialogues, but that's not me playing. So I would say that the play itself is a little bit limited, or not quite that far down the spectrum, but I would say it's probably around a satisfactory again, which is to say, it's a simple game. There's maybe fewer mechanics. Mostly the controls are usable, apart from us not being able to start the game right at the start. Yeah, it feels like satisfactory is kind of
a playable game. I would say, yeah. So let's think about this story engine. Game world to story. How does the game world impact the story?
I don't think it does.
Not really.
No, it feels like nothing that we're doing in the game is impacting the story. The choices that we're making in the sort of dialogue are affecting our stats, and that's affecting the game at the end. Kind of, maybe. I'm still not convinced it's having a big impact on it, or how it's having an impact, but it definitely seems to be very unidirectional. So game world to story feels kind of like we're sort of at the poor level, unfortunately. There's support for it. They could be doing some things with this, like keeping track of who we've spoken to, and like, again, part of the problem is there's not a vast amount of gameplay. It is pretty much solely through the dialogue and some QTEs at the end. So there isn't a lot the gameplay can do to support the story.
So I'm looking at the story engine bit here, and apparently choice of character at the start of the game does influence your relationship with different characters in the game. And apparently it does affect... does it affect...
Is choosing a character at the start of a game a gameplay choice? Because I would say
good
probably
point.
not.
No idea. Yeah, and I don't think it does actually affect what dialogue options you get given. But yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yep. I had a look to see if they had a way to convince me, but I am not convinced. So I think it might be towards the poor side as well for that one. However, that brings us to game world, story to game world, and I think we do have a bit more there, arguably.
Yes, arguably. So the conversations we have impact our stats. What impact does that have on the game world, though?
So apparently the ending is decided from the attributes.
That's not the game world, that's the story, though.
Oh.
So here's the thing. The race is a cutscene with some QuickTime events. If the race was a race and our speed stat determined how fast we went, that would definitely be impacting gameplay. As it is, it kind of doesn't. And again, that's because there is a bit of a lack of gameplay here.
To
the extent where I'm looking back at the meaningful play section and wondering maybe the satisfactory is a little bit high for this. But no, it's still playable. It's just the mechanics are simple, and the problem is they don't seem to interact with the story that much.
That's a good point, actually. Where you can sort of move around in the space, but there's not a huge amount of Yeah. So the I'm looking again at the story engine, and it says, yeah, the mini game. It seems to indicate that the mini game of the doing the race with the little quick time events is functionally doesn't matter at all. When the player
Oh,
finishes the mini game, the ending is decided from their attributes. Um, so
oh,
yeah.
okay. So there is a total disconnect between gameplay and story then.
Mm.
Okay, so let's look at it another way around then. The mini game is something that they've effectively bolted on to make it feel more like a game, but the actual game is this going through dialogues and trying to juggle the stats and balance the stats. Now,
Hmm.
we'll talk about this when we get to agency, in fact, but the gameplay then is figuring out which of those dialogue options is the best and picking it and making all the stats go up so that you win at the end. Okay, so going back to gameplay, yeah, it was satisfactory. It's a bit of a simple premise, but that constitutes a game. The problem then is, yeah, then we have that game world. Oh, interesting. So if we look at it from that perspective, we have game world impacting the story, but we don't have story impacting the game.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if the game is choosing the right dialogue options and that affects the ending, then yeah, then we've got game world to story, but not the other way around after all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it actually does work out that way round.
And in which
In terms
case,
of
game world to story, I would say it feels still quite minor, right?
yeah, I don't
So
think it's beyond a pass, but I think it is the crux of the game.
yeah, I agree. And story to game world, the way that we interact with the different animals doesn't. So, for example, our stats don't affect the story we get, as far as I can tell, which would still be game to story. But they also don't impact the
How you play, like
yeah. Again,
yeah.
if players choosing dialogue options, that's always the
Mm.
same regardless of what we do. So as the story progresses, obviously we get different dialogues every time we talk to a different character, but we don't get different things within the context of what's happened as a result of the story. And
Mhm.
likewise, play at the end isn't changed by anything we've done. In a way, that kind of detracts from it. So they have this mini game, but the stats don't matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it feels to me that like this one might even be absent.
Gosh. Yeah. Um, so would it be the other way? So would yeah. So in terms of grading, it'd be absent for then story to game world, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
And maybe a pass for game world to story, because that is the whole game.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Um, and then that obviously limits the next thing as well, which is agency. What is the richness of choice here?
Are these choices or calculations? That's
Mm.
my way of looking at it. And if the game is
Hmm.
to maximize all of the stats, then they're no longer
Hmm.
choices, they're calculations. It's a case of looking
Hmm.
at this and going, this is the answer that will boost most of my stats.
And I
Actually,
think you could
some
play
of
it
them.
that way. I think you could probably get through this game boosting everything.
So here's the thing, right? Here's one of them that is more of a choice. So
Hmm.
we have to choose which one of these we want to go up. But again, that's
Hmm.
kind of undermined or undercut by A, like you say, it seems relatively easy to boost everything. And
Hmm.
B, we don't know what any of these stats do. If they don't affect the minigame at the end and they just arbitrarily impact the ending that we get, like, is
Hmm.
there an advantage to being smart over being quick? Is there an advantage to being quick over smart? We don't know. We're just trying to sort of raise all of them abstractly.
Hmm.
If we were making choices about, even sort of like the role playing choices of, I'm going to be mean to everyone, but I'm going to be really, really determined and really fast, like a hare.
Hmm.
Versus, actually, you know what? I'm going to be kind. Maybe I won't be as fast or as strong if I'm not as mean to people. And again, I don't necessarily see that correlation, but it's not like at the end we just get a you won or lost. It's not like if we're really, really fast but really, really bad with people, we get an ending where it's like, oh, you won, but nobody comes to your birthday party. So
Mm.
the choices aren't particularly rich as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I don't think the choices are rich. That's kind of the thing, because I do feel like there are a bunch of superficial choices in what you say and how you interact, but I don't think a lot of them actually matter. There is no real punishment for being mean, as far as I can see. Hang on, let me have a little, because you were quite mean in the first one. There were still people offering you juice and whatnot.
Okay, I quite like that.
But I missed that one because I was looking at the thing. What did it say?
Who do you think the best lecturer is? I think it's Tom. How
Oh,
much does
yeah,
this
there
get?
it is.
Ooh, that's a bold choice.
Bold move.
Okay, that tickled me. I quite enjoyed that.
I'm sure you did, because your name was in the game.
Yeah. Now
Okay.
I'm going to struggle to be critical, but yeah, I do think the agency is still a bit problematic.
Yeah. Um. So okay. So I'm looking at the story structure here as well. Player chooses character. Conversations are affected by selected character. It does not tell me how. Um.
I think
Player
that just
encounters
means
NPCs.
if we pick the tortoise, we get different conversations, and that's not. Ooh, got a quick time event. Also, part of the problem is I keep trying to choose the tortoise, but because I have to spam through that cutscene, I keep accidentally selecting the hare.
It's very clear as well from the narrative engine diagram here, the narrative structure diagram here, that it's entirely down to attributes whether you win or lose.
Which again, like, is a real
Yeah.
problem for the agency. If you're going to put in like
Yeah.
this race with the QTEs, we had to help you out. You were so determined.
Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
okay. So actually, we do
Little
get
friends are here to help you.
by killing the tortoise.
I can only assume.
That doesn't seem nice.
You're such a
Okay.
nice guy that we murdered the competition.
Oh, it's friends like these. Okay, but so okay. So there is some context for the way the stats impact the ending, but not as deep or meaningful as perhaps it could be. And yeah, but again, I think the agency is problematic, where they give you a race and you can be at the start, but then you can lose anyway because the stats weren't good enough. I feel like they either need to really lean into that one way or the other.
Yeah. So because the agency is problematic, that the poor category is few choices and player agency is problematic. There are more than a few choices, but only a few are interesting choices to me, and the agency is problematic. So I would put this between a poor and a pass.
I'm inclined to agree.
Okie dokie. Pacing. The pacing is
So we've got 3 separate like acts or rooms or scenes, if you like, and we do have the final race. But the problem is those the 3 acts leading up to it are all identical. It's all just you're in a black room, talk to all of the animals in the room, continue. So the pacing is, as a result, very, very flat. There's arguably this climax at the end of it because they've put in the arbitrary mini game, and again, the fact that it doesn't actually have an impact on anything kind of nullifies it as a climax.
That's the thing. It's like I really feel like these guys have understood that there needs to be some kind of there should be some kind of ascendant pacing. So a way this could have worked, if you're in, the 3 classrooms, fine, but maybe make it so that, you've made your choices and now this bunny has got a little angry face next to it. And when you interact with it, your choices are limited, and that would affect the game and it would be the pacing. And time would be moving through the day. You're getting closer to your race. And then if the race as a game had like some kind of meaning, in terms of what your stats how they affected how your little guy actually runs, how they affected the speed of movement of your sprites and so on, that would be than a much more developed game in this sense. So I do think the pacing is definitely, I would say, unclear and or flat in this. But they have made an attempt.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would put this at a pass, maybe.
Okay, so yeah,
But that's fairly generous.
So choosing a different character means we do get different choices. Again, I don't think that's a gameplay choice impacting the story, but and it doesn't change the gameplay. It gives us a different option, but yeah, just to hang a little hat on that. So in terms of techniques, we have a cutscene at the start. You can kind of see the race as a cutscene, I suppose, with like an interactive cutscene almost. And then we've got the dialogue. So they've got a couple of different techniques, and those techniques do convey the story. You know what? Actually, I think they've done all right here. I would say this is probably at the good level.
Yeah, I think this is one of the stronger elements here. You've got your dialogues that you're going through, and that's conveying a lot of story. You've got your little cutscenes and your interactive cutscene. I would also be happy to put that on the good level.
Okie doke. And last but not least, feedback.
Let me have a little look at the feedback. So there are a few things here, and I will read it aloud. One of the first pieces of advice we received at the labs is that we need to clearly define the core dynamic of the game and integrate it through the gameplay. After a short discussion, we decided that resource management was the most fitting potential core dynamic for us to explore. To make the transition from story to minigame feel more natural, we got the suggestion to consider adding smaller minigames earlier in the game so that there is a better balance between player skill and story outcomes, ensuring the player's performance in the final minigame doesn't drastically alter the endings. This is important to ensure the player's choices and interactions with characters have a more significant impact on the narrative. So yeah, they were being told that the game world and story needed to interact more clearly. There needed to be gameplay interaction here. So to accommodate that, we added a small quiz and interactions with hidden outcomes that can benefit the player that choose wisely. I don't think that quite counts, guys.
Oh, interesting. I picked speed that time, and I'm pretty sure determination went up anyway. I would agree. I think making it more of a sort of like an explicitly resource management focused dynamic. So by having the stats there on display and seeing the choices, like including that, definitely made it more of a game. If they didn't have that and it was just sort of going through dialogue options and then getting an ending, there would be less game there because we have less control and context for what we're doing. The remainder of it, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure it's necessarily either they've necessarily interpreted the feedback in the way we hoped, or they've just not been able to sort of deliver on the thing that they were trying to do.
And it says, lastly, they were advised to allow the player to explore freely and guide them towards engaging with the story without forcing them. To do this, we added dialogue with the other main character at the end of each room, which results in them asking if they are ready to leave the room yet or not. This guides the player to finish checking rooms before they leave instead of locking them in the room until all the characters have been talked to. I think that was wise. That is an indicator of player agency, but it's not a major game-changing interpretation.
And honestly, I don't think it's been particularly impactful. There's little difference, but interesting. I guess because we're very smart, that's how we win the race, because we've maxed our smart stat. And the way we've outsmarted the foxes by saying, hey, look over there.
The little guy. Yep.
But yeah, there's not much difference between having a character say, do you want to progress, and just locking, in a way, right? Locking the door until you'd spoken to everyone is a more clearer attempt at managing agency. On the other hand, giving the player that choice and actually giving them the agency to not interact with the game is, is it also doesn't hinder it, because if you want to interact with the game,
and if you
want to I think So
Go
yeah,
straight to the race. Like I feel like that would be that. I feel like that's reasonable in terms of player agency. I do think this is on the whole though, they have thought about the feedback, but the changes have had limited success.
yeah, I agree.
And I would put this as a pass.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings us to the end of this game and to the end of this batch. So thank you very much for watching, and we will join you again very soon for another video. Bye bye.
Take care, folks.